In this movie, we're going to look at what we can do with these symbol timelines. And actually, I shouldn't say this movie. This is going to be a couple of sections we're going to have to do for this. It's a little bit longer of a project. But we're going to end up with a project something like this. Now, this actually is a QuickTime video. And I'll see what is going to happen here. What we've built here is simply a counter. And we're going to see how we can use graphic symbols and graphic symbol timelines to do something like this. Okay, and you watch this, it counts, we've got 10 places, so it counts in the ones digit, the tens digit, and the 100s digit. Okay, so this is where we're headed over the span of the next probably 30 or 40 minutes. Okay, let's go ahead and close this out and go to Flash. Let's go ahead and use this movie. We'll just delete this layer that's got all this stuff on it. Boy, I really missed on my background color, didn't I? Let's change this background color. You know, we can do this really easily simply by coming in and let's choose this swatch for our color, and I want to make it a little bit lighter. So increase the brightness and a little bit less saturated. So we'll decrease the brownness. I'm going to double click this to edit the symbol in place. Oops, I can't do it because I've locked it. So we double click, we're inside the background. I have changed my color there, so all I have to do is use my paint bucket, which the shortcut is K, and you can see that there, just as I clicked it, we have a little bit brighter. Now if I'd used this background in a bunch of different places in my movie, it would have changed it in a bunch of different places in the movie as well, and that's a good thing. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is create our symbol that we're going to use for the background for the numbers. We're going to use the rectangle primitive tool, and we're going to make it, how about this nice light kind of buff color. Let's go ahead and put a new layer on here, and right now I am working on the main timeline. I could do that and just drag it out here so I could see the size, but I know what size I want because I've read my specification. My employer wants it to be 100 by 150, and my employer being this note card with my notes on it. Okay, so we're going to see a different way to make a symbol. You can come up to your Insert menu and choose Insert New Symbol. This is useful when you don't have any artwork on your stage and you know exactly what size you want to make your artwork. Or it's also useful when you are making what I call a composite symbol. And that's going to be a symbol that is made up of other symbol instances. So I'm going to insert a new symbol. We're going to call this number BG. That's my shortcut for background. I'm going to also call this underscore art because this is simply going to be a shape. Graphic symbol is fine for this. Use our rectangle primitive tool on stage. Oh, I didn't choose it. And I've got my color selected. It's that kind of buff color. Now my notes have told me that I want it to be a width of 100 by a height of 150. And I also wrote down that I want it to have, get this out of the way. I want it to have a corner radius of 25. There's my rounded rectangle. Select it with your selection tool, and let's go ahead and remember we're inside the symbol. Okay, we're working on number BG art. You always want your artwork inside of a symbol instance to have some kind of logical relationship to your registration point. That's your 0, 0 point. In this case, I want this one to be aligned so its upper left-hand corner is at 0, 0. So I could do that with my align panel, or I could just come in to X and type 0, hit tab, and it moves you to the Y field, also selects the numbers. So I can hit tab again. Whoops, I hit 0 again, hit tab again, and that commits the change, moves me to width, which I don't want to change. And there we can see it's aligned at the upper left. At this stage in the game, when you're first starting out to make symbols, it's really easy to just not really pay attention to the relationship to the registration point. Do pay attention. I want to show you another way to do this while we're in here. Let's say it's not in any kind of logical relationship. Actually, let's move it over here so it's not It's not covered up here. You can also choose Align to Stage. And whenever you're in the symbol editor, aligning to stage really means align to registration point. Seems like they could make that. They could change that so that it says align to registration point. Don't know why they never have. Okay, so I'm aligning to stage. I'm going to left align it and top align it, and that does the same thing. It puts it at X is 0, Y is 0. Okay, this is my background. Since I made this by insert new symbol, if I come back to scene 1, that's my main timeline, you're going to see nothing here. Okay, because this doesn't put an instance on the stage. All it does is places that one in the library. Guess what? We're done with Monopoly House and Hotel. So we are simply going to delete these from the library. Good chance to see that. Panel menu, like so. Okay. Let's make another symbol. Now what this symbol is going to do is it's going to have the numbers, those stencil numbers that are going to count for us. And we're going to see how this can be a timeline thing. First of all, Flash rhymes with crash. I've been doing all this work today without saving. Not a good idea. So we're going to go ahead and save this. Instead of untitled 2, we're going to say this as in progress. In progress. And we will put this in our demo current folder and save. Okay, what we're going to make now is what I call a composition symbol. And this symbol is going to be a symbol that contains an instance of some other symbol. So you can see if we come up to Insert, New Symbol, we're going to call this numbers, also a graphic. You can see here we are plunked in here. We're going to take number background art, number BG art, and simply drag an instance of this onto the stage. Okay, so now we have a symbol called numbers that contains an instance of number BG art. And go ahead and align that. Like so. I'm going to go ahead and name my layer. Now notice this is a layer inside the symbol. It's not a layer on the main timeline. Number BG art. Okay, and I'm going to lock it so I don't mess it up. We're going to find this is really handy later on. Now the idea behind this symbol is going to contain the numbers 0 through 9 all on top of this. Okay, so let's go ahead and make our timeline a little bit longer. I'm going to come out here and I'm going to not insert a keyframe. Don't want a keyframe there. I'm going to insert a frame. Make a new layer. And this will be numerals. Because this is where I'm going to put my text field. Now, Flash text, you're going to find in Flash 6 and before, CS6 and before, you have some options of making these things called TLF text fields. Just forget about those. As you're reading in your book, I'm actually going to take that reading out. We're not going to study TLF text fields because they've disappeared in Flash CC. They added a lot of typography, a lot of typographic options and stuff, and made it a lot easier to format text. However, they're not playing well with a lot of the other things, a lot of the other formats that we need to use for Flash. So they've taken them out. They may come back at some day, but for now we are going to be making have a choice of static text, dynamic text, or input text. These two, dynamic and input, are for action scripted movies. Static text is what we'll be sticking with for now. Now I have chosen this stencil font. I'm going to give it a color of, shall we do it? Let's do this dark brown instead of black. And I made this at 100 points already, which is the size I want. So I'm going to come in here, and on this keyframe, we will put our first number, or I should say numeral, 0. Now, the funny thing about fonts is that these things, whenever you've got a character in Flash, it's going to give you room for any descenders. That's like on the letter G, you know, where the little curly Q thing comes under. So it's a little bit harder to align these things. I want to start off by trying to align this and, well, I shouldn't have locked that, and my background. So we're going to align these two. We don't want to align these to the symbol instance. We're going to align them to each other. So I'm going to deselect that, and watch what happens when I click Align Center. It moves them both to a place in between. Not what I wanted. I wanted to leave my background in place and align this to the background. So if I start off with this inside the background, the smaller one inside, what's going to happen when I hit Align Vertical Centers is it's going to do it like so. Now, on the up-down movement, I would really come in here, measure the height of this, and then center it like that. However, I've already done that. Have I done that? I didn't. Nuts. I thought I did. Quick way to see how to measure it. Align it to the top. To start with, I'm going to lock that. Align it to the top of your symbol. Okay. Bring a guide down to the bottom, and I can quickly double click that, which I can't do because I've still got lock guides turned on. I'm going to use my shortcut for that to unlock them. Double click that. I see that that's at 80. I know this is 150 tall. 150 minus 80 is what? 70? Is that right? So if I bring it down 35, so what's 80 plus 35? 115? Stop me if I'm getting my arithmetic wrong. Now I can just bring this down. I'm just going to nudge it down. I could zoom in on this if I wanted to, or whatever. So basically we're just getting this lined up so that it's not, so that it's centered on there. Okay, this is my first number in my number symbol. But look, I've got a bunch of different frames. What we're going to do here is come and select this. And this is going to be just like making your new keyframes when you were doing the bouncing ball thing. I'm going to hit F6 and see that has made a new keyframe and advanced the playhead. So now I can come with my text tool, double click, and type 1. Let's zoom in on here again and see what happens if I hit just the F6 key. New keyframe, moves it, selects the object. I can type here and type 2. Hit F6 again. This is one of those places where your keyboard shortcuts are very nice. Type 3. F6, 4, 5. Oh, what did I just do? Yikes. I better check myself. I wasn't, sometimes you don't pay attention. 1. Here's a good thing to learn. If I want to step through this symbol timeline one frame at a time, I could come down here and clumsily click. However, if you look, let's zoom differently. This control right down here allows me to step forward one frame. Very handy. 1, frame 2, frame 3, frame 4, frame 5. 3, 5. Dumb. Okay, we'll change that to 4. Hit F6 again. Oops. Oh, see what's happening? When this is all selected and you hit F6, it puts a keyframe in all of those. I've seen some people do that in class, so it's probably a good idea for me to show you that. If I hit F6 with everything selected, everything becomes a keyframe. Not what I want here. I want to select an individual frame, then hit F6, and that makes a new frame for me. 5. Hit F6. 6. Now I find this really easy to screw up because I'm looking at an F6 and trying to remember numbers and talk at the same time. Wait a minute. 9. I think that's all I need. Let's make sure we're going to step backward. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, so here is my number symbol. And we're going to see that this can come in really handy. I'm going to put an instance of this numbers symbol on my stage, and we're going to start to see some things about the way that graphic symbols work when placed on a timeline. So I just dragged this instance out, and look at how long my timeline is. It's 1 frame long. Okay? But we know that this symbol has some animation in it. It has animation in it that is 10 frames long. Okay, back to the main timeline. I'm going to test my movie. Remember, this is Control Test Movie on Flash Professional, or we just use the shortcut, which is Command Return. Memorize this one, because we'll be doing it a lot. There is my tested movie. And I'm not seeing any change here. Okay? What's going on here is that this graphic symbol needs frames on its parent timeline. That's the frame where it's been placed. That needs to have some frames running too. Watch what happens if I add a frame to my main timeline. I'm going out here and hit F5 or insert frame. Now I have no frames or only 1 frame in my background layer and 2 frames here, but look at what happens when I move this. Go to frame 2 and it's showing a different number. We're going to go ahead and add 10 frames to this by inserting a frame, F5, and look at this. A graphic symbol will play as its parent timeline plays. Okay? This is the child timeline, this instance of graphic. This is the parent timeline, scene 1. So if I were to test this, I would see these numbers going by really, really fast. Okay? This is nice, I guess, if we've got a counter that's counting really fast, but I want something that's going to count a little bit slower, something that's going to, maybe count 4 numbers per second. So I could come in here to my symbol called numbers and start adding some frames in between here, but that's going to be kind of problematic, though, wouldn't it? Because we saw that, I've got my tens frame and my hundreds frame, so I'd have to come back and I have to make a new numbers symbol and all that. It's not such a good idea. So instead, what we're going to do is come back and delete that so I don't. And create another composition symbol. Okay? I'm going to call this one numbers ones column. Okay? A couple of ways to make a composition symbol. We saw before, actually we will do it this way, same way. Insert new symbol, and we're going to call this one numbers ones. Okay? Choose OK, and we're going to put in the numbers. It's an instance of our numbers symbol. Go ahead and align it. And what we're going to do next is the important thing. We're going to set the play properties for this. This is something that you control through the properties panel. And this is only for graphic symbols. If you come down under looping, they call this looping, I call it the play properties. We're going to change our option to single frame. We're going to put it on single frame, frame 1. So as I add some frames here, I'm going to use F5 here, that's the keyboard shortcut. You can see, unlike before, it's not changing, right? Because I've just told it, this instance on keyframe 1, I want you to show me a single frame of this symbol, and the single frame I want to see is frame 1. Did I put 6 in here? I put 5. Hit F5 to make that longer. Okay. I put a new keyframe because I want to tell this symbol instance to do something different at frame 6. Okay, so or frame 7, sorry. I've put a keyframe in here. You can see it right there. I'm going to select it here on this frame, and leave it at single frame, but instead I want it to show me frame 2, which paradoxically is showing me number 1, but that's all what happens when we start counting at 0. And especially if you're doing kind of programming or something, get used to it, because we begin counting at 0 a lot. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Make another keyframe here, like so, and tell it to put the first at 3. So on and so forth. Now, I have already built this symbol for you so that you don't have to watch me do this over and over again, because that would be boring. However, what I do want you to see here is what we've made is a symbol that has, in this case, well, we'll put some frames on here. Let's come out to F5. That's a couple frames more. Okay, so we have this symbol that its timeline is displaying or showing us another instance, an instance of that numbers symbol, but it's changing the numbers every 5 or 6 frames, depending on how well I count it out. So let's see what that does when sitting on the stage. And delete this one. I could have just swapped it, but I'm going to delete it just to prove a point here. I'm going to come out here with numbers 1s, put it on the stage, and we want a bunch more frames here. So I'm going to come out here to 525 and insert a frame. And what we will do here is tell this symbol to loop starting on frame 1. And what we're going to see it do now is as we play, it's going to hit 1. As it goes in 6 frames, another 6, it's going to hit 2. Then it's going to show us 3. Or it's going to show us 3 somewhere. Let me make these normal. Oh, maybe I didn't did I not change it for 3? Oh, well, here's a nice little thing you can do here. Look at this. This is where it went to 0. I am on my main timeline. I'm on frame 20. If you double click a graphic symbol instance, what it's going to do is take you right to where that symbol is in its timeline. So see, there's no frame 20 here. And so what it has done is looped around. So if I come in here, I actually wanted to change that to number 3. So I choose my single frame, choose 4 there. I got confused by the... Oh, wait. No, I was expecting... Okay, sorry. Let's just go ahead and add that number because I really want that number here. Choose 4, give it some frames to display. I would be counting these, but I can't see very well, so I'm just 0, 1, 2, 3. So now we go back to our main timeline, and we can see that it's playing through 0, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3. If we test our movie, you can see it's only playing those 3 frames because those are the only ones that are shown in our composition symbol that's displaying different frames of the numbers symbol. Okay, so I've made this symbol already, and I want to show you something that you can do. I'm going to open up a file, and this file is, let's see, numbers counter final. And this is where we're going to finally. I'm going to come over to in progress, and when you're in one movie and you have another movie open, you can actually pull stuff out of the other library. I'm going to show you how to do this. Your library is going to have this drop-down box up here that allows you to look at libraries for other open movies. Like here's number counter final. Okay, now I have this this symbol in here called number counter tens digit. That's why I made it a point to name mine differently. And I can't remember if I've changed my background name or not, Let's just drag this in here. I am on my main timeline. Yeah, I kept my names different. So now you can see, let's delete this one. This is that numbers digit that has, oh, I dragged in tens digit. I am just going crazy on this. Okay, we'll drag in ones digit as well. Whenever I'm dragging things back and forth, I do like to go back to my library for my movie that I started with, because otherwise I'm likely to do bad things to the other library, like delete stuff. Okay, so I have instances of two symbols here. This one is that we were just taking the shortcut on making. It's numbers counter ones digit. If I go in here, you'll see, yes, I've done this so that the numbers change. And they are doing so by changing the looping properties. It's sitting on single frame and which one we want it to display. Frame 8, this time frame 9. Now I did the same thing with my tens digit. However, what I did in tens digit is I put these further apart. Okay, this is an instance of number counter. That's the same, if we go in and look at this, this is the same thing that has 0 through 9 in it. But the tens digit, I am only changing every 45 frames. Okay, because I know that my first one, this guy, my ones counter, in this case I have 9 different instances, and I actually only did them for 5 frames on this. So 9 times 5, this is 45 frames long. So when I get to 46, that's when I'm going to go back to 0, and that's when I want to change my 1. And so what this has done, I'm going to give you this file so that you can look over it and see how this is working. What this has done is it has made this so it changes numbers only 1/10 of the times. Okay, this one counts up to 9, and when it goes to 0, this one changes. The neat thing about this is that if we look at the main timeline, it will play out on the main timeline here. 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, we're getting close. Okay. Graphic symbols, not only are they tied to the main timeline with this kind of one-to-one relationship, but they will display to you what they are doing. Okay, they will display to you how the interior symbol is functioning. Okay, so this one is only changing numbers every 45 frames. So as a result, back on our main timeline, we see it change on frame 46. This one is changing every 5 frames. So back on the main timeline, it's going to stay the same through 1 through 5. Then when we get to frame 6, it changes to 1. Make sense so far? Pretty good? Okay. Well, I'm going to bring out another symbol that I made in advance. And you believe me, this took me like 45 minutes to do this afternoon. So you're glad you're not going to have to watch me do this. Let's come into our library here. And I did a hundreds digit. Where is it? Oh, what's wrong? I'm in the wrong file. Remember, I opened my library for my other file, and there's the hundreds digit. Bring it in. That has basically just imported it into my in progress file. And if we go into this one, I'm going to edit this in place and look at this, and you're going to see that, oh boy, this thing, we're going to have to close this up a little bit, make these really small. Actually, we're going to have to make them tiny because we're on the timeline of this hundreds digit, and you're going to see that this thing doesn't change until we get all the way out to, oh, there it is, whatever the length of the tens digit is, which is 450. So in frame 451 is where it changes to 1. Now, the thing I want to make clear here is that what's doing this different behavior is not a bunch of different artwork. we made one symbol with 10 frames on it, 10 keyframes that went from 0 to 9. And what we're doing is we're making this behave differently for ones, tens, and hundreds by changing the structure. We're creating this structure in which this simple symbol, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, is deployed in different ways using these different looping properties of the graphic symbol. And so what we get out of this is now this thing that will count. And I probably should have made this count faster because we're going to have to wait a little bit. It is going to change to 100 pretty soon. Come on, come on, come on, come on. We'll be editing this out in the video. Okay, we're almost there. Wait for it, wait for it. There it is. Okay, so out of that one very simple symbol, we have created this counter. Oops, something's going wrong here because you know what I'm not sure. Oh, you know what? Why did it go back to 0? You know what happened? It went back to 0 because how many frames are here? 450? How many frames are on the main timeline? This button is really handy too. This takes you to your last frame. And you'll see that this timeline has, like 520 frames on it or thereabout. It has 525. So as soon as this thing loops around, it encounters this frame at the very beginning, which tells it to place this thing on stage beginning at frame 1. Okay, so when your main timeline loops, it's looped around and reset this back to 0. So in order to actually see everything from this timeline play, we're in the timeline of hundreds digit. In order to see everything, our main timeline would have to have 4,500 frames on it. If you want to center your view of the timeline, you can do it right like that. That's this button right there. That centers your playhead. So our hundreds digit has 4,500 frames on it. So in order to see this count through perfectly, our main timeline would have to have 4,500 frames on it. Boy, would that be a pain, wouldn't it? Okay, well, what we're going to do and see next, and this is going to be in the next part, is going to see how we can use a different symbol type to make this work a lot better. Okay, but before we do that, before we look at the movie clip, I want to just review this just a little bit here. So let's start with our ones digit, and we're going to go all the way back to the very beginning. And if we come into the ones digit and look at this, we're editing in place. I double-clicked it so that we could jump in here, and we will see that its timeline is, boy, it's hard to click on those little numbers, but we have to keep them small. Its timeline is 45 frames long. So that means if we just place it on the stage and let it loop around, that's one of our other settings. We're going to let it loop around starting on frame 1. It will play through, and when it gets to the end of its timeline, that is exactly when we want this one to change to a 1, because this is going to loop around back to 0. Okay? This is 45 frames long, so it's going to loop and be 0 on frame 46. So let's go into this symbol. This is our tens digit, and what we want it to do is stay on 0 until it gets to the point where that ones digit is going to loop, which is frame 46. And you can see here, they kind of misalign up here, so it really looks like it's at 45, but just look down here to see what actual frame you're on. So it's actually going to change at 46. It's going to change to the number 2 when we get to 46 plus that same length of the timeline, 45 frames, which would be 91. Okay, whoops. That's where it changes to 2. Now, if we look at this timeline, this is our tens digit. This timeline is how many frames long? Let's center it, and we click on our last one. You can see this is 450 frames long. Makes sense. We've got 9 different numbers, 45, or I'm sorry. We've got 0 through 9, which is 10 different digits to display. 10 times 45 frames long gives us 450. So we're going to want the hundreds digit to go to number 1, from 0 to number 1, at the frame right after that, at this point where this one loops around to 0, which would be frame 451. So let's go back to scene 1, double click to go inside the hundreds digit, and you can see, let's go move down here. It does get a little bit hard to move around in your timeline when you get to things like this. I've got one of these swell trackpad things, these Apple trackpads that is really nice for that. But you can see here, because you can just do it with a 2-finger drag, you can see here though that we are on frame 451, and yes indeed, that's exactly where we want it to change. Add 450 to that, that would be what, 901? Oh, another way, quick way to go move around in here is to use your little slider here. And you can see that this is where we changed to 2 at frame 901. So that's how these things are working together. And if we do look at these things on the main timeline, you can see that I have set their looping behavior so that they loop beginning on frame 1. This one loops beginning on frame 1. This one loops beginning on frame 1. So they're all, it's like they're all starting a race, but they only change at certain frames. So now we can go on to movie clips, and we're going to look at how movie clips make this big timeline mess unnecessary, and they also allow us to do some cool things like add some drop shadow and bevel filters. So come on back.